Okay. Morning, welcome to Ordinance and Policy Committee for November the 15th, and we have present here today, we have Councilman Brad Schramm and Austin Clunt, and we have Public Works Director Troy. We have Public Safety Commissioner Justin. We have the Code Enforcement Officer Chelsea, and we have we have the Finance Officer Chandra Phillips, and I think probably the mayor's coming along shortly. We'll go ahead and get started, and the first item on the agenda today is ordinance number 1068, which is entitled Grease Traps. And what this is all about, we do have an ordinance that touches basically on it. That's section 5306. It doesn't give a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't give a lot of detail on what the current ordinance does. This was based upon several months ago. Troy and I had visited about this because of some places, fast food places mainly, but other places also that are in the food preparation business were not getting their grease traps properly cleaned out or emptied or whatever is required, and consequently a large amount of grease was going into our sewer system. And maybe you can describe it a little better as far as what problem that causes.
Well, so we've noticed that since we put in that new screen down at our main lift station in town here, that has some brushes in it, and it runs on a timer, so it's got a wet well and all that good stuff. But basically what happens when the restaurants or whatever aren't tending to their grease traps on a regular basis is it causes problems for the whole city. That grease will start to build up in our sewer system, in the pipes. And then once it's exposed to air, it'll get dry and hard, and it'll actually form hard chunks of grease, and so then there's always the potential to plug up a sewer main, and that can cause problems for all the residents of the city of Winter. But in our case, down in the sewer building, it causes a lot of issues down there, and then the chemicals to treat the grease get quite expensive. So we've just had, it just seems like in the last couple of years, we've had several instances where the grease traps at a couple of different entities have just they've no maintenance there whatsoever. So we had one manhole where the grease was actually pushing up out of the manhole and out onto a city right of way. So it can get out of hand fast, and then of course it costs taxpayers dollars to clean all that mess up. So yeah, that's where this came into. We brought this to Paul, and we just wanted to be able to, at the very least, get some of the funds back for the city, so that we can. We're not continually having to use taxpayer dollars to try and remedy these situations. So we needed we need to make sure, first of all, that we can find them or address the situation in a manner where it won't happen again.
You bet. So looking at what's in front of you here, just kind of the bullet points, it does, number one, it verifies and confirms that we have the authority through the Public Works Director or his designee has the authority to go in to a place that does food service and inspect the grease trap to make sure that it's functioning properly, that it's getting cleaned out, things like that. It makes obviously their obligation to keep it clean on a regular basis. We don't define the time when it's required, largely because as I studied this thing, the requirements for how often were kind of across the board depending on what type of a place you were dealing with. If you had a fast food restaurant that's serving 5,000 people a day, that's a whole different ballgame than if you have, for instance, the hospital that maybe serves a couple hundred meals a day. So we don't establish a set time frame. It's just the obligation is on the facility and the facility's owner or operator to be able to ensure that the grease trap is being properly maintained and cleaned and whatnot. If we find a significant violation, the information comes to my office, and we can file a complaint and charge them with a Class 2 misdemeanor, which is up to a $500 fine for the violation. The other thing that we can do is we can also require them to repay all of the expense that we incurred. So if we have X number of people working X number of hours, we know how that gets billed out based upon our resolution. If we have equipment, that's included, and if we have buying separate chemicals and things like that, we can take those expenses and include them as well. So that really is kind of the long and short of what this ordinance is all about. Anybody have any questions on it or concerns? Or
Where do we get the information about item 3, grease trap must be emptied at least weekly? That came from,
that came from me, frankly, based upon the various places that I was reading.
okay. But like you just said.
But it's only emptied as opposed to a full service cleaning. Okay? To say that they're emptied is only saying they're emptied. It's not requiring the full service cleaning. That's up to them, between them and their, the manufacturer of the facility that, and based upon their own usage experience. They didn't, you know, once they've dealt with these systems, the people that operate them learn how often they need to be serviced.
Right, but if you have, if one of the requirements is to empty it at least weekly, most of them wouldn't need that. Like the grease trap we have at the baseball field,
Okay?
okay? We empty that at the end of the year, at the end of the baseball season, when we're done using it. And it doesn't get enough grease in it to even empty once a week.
Okay.
That's why I wonder, I know the one at Golden Prairie, which I understand may have been installed backwards. When I started working there 3 years ago, Ryan said it needs to be cleaned once a year. And that's what they had been doing, I understand. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, this year, it decided to show the effects of being installed backwards. He cut it out, put in a new one, but I'm not sure what you call a grease trap. The trap that's at the baseball field is a box that all the sewer line goes through before it goes into the city sewer. The one at Golden Prairie is built into the ground, outdoors, and somehow it traps the grease before the water can go down the pipe. Okay, so, and then a sewer truck comes and pumps out the grease once a year. So I don't know where, would we need to do that, for instance, at where I work,
Right.
every week? That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. And that's what I'm looking for, because
That's
I only
what
go based on what I was reading.
Yep, that's why I asked where this came from.
Right,
If there's,
right.
if the type of collector that you have, or whatever, the diversion deal.
Basically what a grease trap is you got an inflowing pipe and an outgoing pipe. So you got an inlet and an outlet.
Yep,
And they're towards the bottom of the tank. So if your grease trap is just a square tank, the FOGs, the fats, oils, and greases, they call them, they float to the top.
They float to the
And then the fuller the grease trap gets, the more pressure, and it forces the cleaner water below the floating it forces that water out. And then, so obviously what happens when the grease trap gets too full, there's no room for that clean water, then
And it
the fats,
pushes
oils,
the
and greases start to get forced out of that pipe. It's just based on greases and oils are lighter than water, and they float, and they take the food particulates to the top with them. But if they don't get cleaned out in a timely manner,
Right.
so in your case with Golden Prairie Manor, it sounds to me like they constructed a grease trap that was big enough that only has to be pumped out like yearly or.
So this needs to say, rather than once a week, it needs to say something to the effect of as appropriate to maintain the flow, rather than, because that'd be a tough thing to
Yep.
have to hire somebody every week to come in.
That's
when
why
that
it's good to
system
get
is
this
so big.
information.
Yeah, I don't know the first thing about it, I'll tell you that.
And grease traps fall in the same realm as, like at our car washes and our garages and things like that, they have a pit
Yep,
in them for the.
I understand exactly
To
how
collect
that
the
is, yeah.
sand, it's the same, falls under the same ordinance.
Yep,
It
And they
does.
obviously don't pump them out weekly, they do it
right,
as
but
needed.
that's why I'm afraid to put it in here.
Sure, sure.
It has to be done weekly, but it needs to be upon inspection, you know, that, there needs to be, depending on quantity,
I guess what I would suggest is, my suggestion would be to find out from whoever you can who installed that grease trap, and then ask them, you know, hey, what do you guys recommend? You know, how often do we pump this? What's the capacity of it? You know,
there,
is
I
it-
would think there would need to be some kind of charting that if you produce this much grease, you need this big of a trap that needs to be cleaned in this manner.
I know, like, some of the
That's
fast,
gotta be somewhere.
some of the fast food places in town, theirs are in the facilities, so they do clean theirs weekly. I mean, because they're not an outdoor, like a bigger pit, like.
Probably like the box we have at the baseball field.
Same thing.
Yeah, that's just a 3x3 box. Yep, and so, and it all depends on how much you produce through it.
So what I need to do is rework this particular paragraph, so it basically is requiring them to be emptying it at least as often as is necessary to prevent it
Correct.
from,
Depending on capacity
Yeah.
of the trap.
Yep.
And production of the grease. And that, somebody has to know those numbers. I don't know if Ryan Brosick would be a good
Well,
guy to ask first.
and I'm only guessing here, but I'm guessing that some of the businesses in town probably have never seen a chart,
Understand,
probably don't, and probably have never utilized one. Fortunately, they're at least aware of the fact that they need to clean it out once in a while in order to prevent
right?
the grease from going in.
But that's not our responsibility.
It is not, it is
That's
not.
the responsibility of the entity.
Right, but it's our responsibility to write an ordinance that is not unduly,
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
so
So,
we need to find out those numbers before we.
well, I don't think we can put numbers in, that's my point.
Oh, okay,
I don't think we can put numbers in because of the variety of the types of facilities we have and the amount of capacity that goes through their kitchens. Some of them are 100 meals a day, some of them are 5,000.
yep, I don't disagree.
So, I hesitate to put in numbers per se, I just want
But
to
somebody-
place the burden on them to be requiring that they stay ahead of the game so they're not putting the
People that
grease into
install
the
these Grease
system.
trap deals, though, they have to have a chart that says, if you produce this much grease,
Yeah.
you need this big a system,
Sure,
and it needs to be cleaned this often. That's what we need to put in here, if we can find that from.
according to the manufacturer's recommendation.
Yeah, very good, very good. That would satisfy, I think, everybody.
Okay, I can work that language in
If we can
and get rid of this.
somehow- yeah.
Okay, good, that's good feedback. Anything else?
Other than that, I think that's a good idea, because
Okay. Austin, you okay? With that change? All right. 1069. This is, it looks so simple, and yet, when you look at what we're doing here, there's one little group of 5 words that makes the ordinance completely vague, unenforceable, etc. What this is intending to do, obviously, is to prevent people from living in a camper.
Do we have that on 7th Street now? Green,
yeah,
skirting?
Yeah,
Okay.
I won't go into any
Yep,
names.
I understand.
We've got at least 3 or 4 situations going on right now that we're aware of. And trying to get a handle on a couple of them, I think we're making progress. But as I have come back several times, and the Public Safety Commissioner has brought me back to it several times and forced me to look at it, and we keep coming back to the question, what does it mean, occasional use?
Right.
Who defines it? What's that mean?
And who allows it?
Yeah,
Okay, did we not have a similar ordinance to this with parking my camper on a public street? And
Oh, yeah.
part of that discussion was when grandpa comes to stay the weekend, brings the motor home, brings the camper, and him and the kids are gonna sleep in the camper at night. Did we not allow,
72 hours, no
3
slide
days?
on the street side.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So shouldn't this be,
And it also states that you can't sleep in it when it's parked.
on
I
the,
don't
on
know that it
the,
says
on the
that.
street, I don't believe they're
You can't.
allowed to. If it's,
Nope.
if it's in the driveway,
I'd like to
if
see that.
it's in the driveway, it's the 72-hour thing, but if it's on the public street, there's no sleeping in it,
Right.
under that other
Yeah, I didn't know
ordinance.
about the sleep, and I just knew that the
Yep.
street, on the street, 72 hours, no slide out on the.
No slide out on the street side.
Well, that's as far as parking it on the
But that
street.
was also designed that way, so, because I remember we had the conversation of grandpa coming and spending the night in the camper with the kids, with the grandkids.
Well,
So
that may have been in this
we need
ordinance,
Right.
to look that up.
because
I
parking
can
on
tell
the
you that
street,
you can't sleep in it on
No.
the street, because I've had that several times this summer that people have called asking.
Okay.
And you can't sleep in it if it's parked on the street.
Right.
So it can't be used for sleeping, living
Yeah.
quarters, so.
Yeah, now, if it's in the driveway, like I say, or off the public street onto private property, you've got
That's
that
where we've got
72-hour.
this.
Am I wrong on that?
I think that's where this would fall, is this occasional use may be allowed.
That's a different ordinance.
Yeah, it's a different ordinance, but we
We
could
need to,
certainly
we
put it
need to
in.
look that up and see what it says.
That ordinance is for anything. That ordinance is for any vehicles. Like if I have a trailer, or
Yes.
my pontoon, or my boat, or whatever,
Yep.
can't leave it parked in one spot for more than 72 hours. I have to move it.
Yeah,
and when it came to the recreational vehicles, Brad, you couldn't have the steps down into the street, you couldn't have your slide
right?
out into the street.
I'm 100% in agreement.
Yeah, the 72 hours was for people loading and unloading. So when they would pull up to their house, if they can't fit in their driveway or whatever it was, then they were allowed to go in and out of their camper while it's parked on the street to load it, unload it, clean it, do all that. Sleeping was never allowed in it.
The 72 also included the time frame of a weekend,
So Brad,
because that was all part of that discussion. Yeah.
so the recreational equipment, no major recreational equipment such as travel trailers, pickup campers, coaches, tent trailers, and the like shall be parked on a city street in a residential district for more than 72 hours. No such equipment shall be occupied for living, sleeping, or housekeeping purposes while it is parked on a city
Very
street.
good, okay.
No
I'm
slide
happy.
or other expandable portion of such equipment shall be open, expanded, or extended to protrude into any city street at any time.
Okay, and that's ordinance what?
72.04.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to hear.
And just so this makes sense, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but the chapter 72, we're into the traffic code for parking, which is, this one that's in front of us now in chapter 154 is actually part of the land usage under the zoning.
Okay,
Totally different chapter, different qualifications for what, sometimes you have some carryover, which we apparently have here.
Yep.
But they're two separate deals.
But they say the same thing,
Similar,
similar. right?
yes, I totally agree. So the question is, what do we do with that language? Do we just strike it like I have it here, or do we go back and adopt the 72-hour thing so people can sleep in them for up to 72 hours? I mean, I'm not advocating one way or the other, I'm asking you guys, what do you think it ought to say?
I know just a piece of information, but I know there's several people in town that own properties that there's nothing on the property, and a couple times a year, they bring a travel trailer and they stay here for like a week or two at a time.
Yeah.
And the only thing on their property is a plug-in on the pole. At their request, it's been put there, and that's what they use that property for.
And I have seen some of them that have taken their drain tube and hooked it into our city sewer,
Yeah.
which I think ought to be against the law.
It is,
Okay,
They own the lot, so that's what they use it for.
yeah.
yeah.
But because we don't charge them for sewer on an empty lot, it should be illegal to hook a camper trailer up to that sewer on that empty lot.
They would technically have to register with the city for water and sewer
Agreed.
on that property.
And I think
in
we
order-
already have that ordinance, because I've seen.
Oh, we do, yeah.
I've seen them and I get, we
Yep.
need to take care of this, you just don't do anything.
Yep, yep.
But I know right where they are, yeah.
Yeah, but that prevents them technically from hooking up to the water and sewer. It doesn't stop them from pulling in and plugging it in to the electric if they've got a,
Which if they have electric, there,
outlet.
they're paying,
If they
they're
have
paying the
electric,
minimum, they're paying the
Yeah.
minimum.
They're
on
paying
electric.
it, yeah.
They
So I
are.
don't have any problem with them plugging their camper in.
But
right,
this ordinance stops that too.
I do have a problem with hooking up to unmetered water and sewer.
well, I do too, but that's a different subject.
Yeah.
What we're talking about today here is, are we going to have a ordinance that allows or prevents anybody from spending time living in their camper on the property, whether it's on their own property or anywhere else?
Well, I still make the point, and I don't care what we do, because first off, I don't have a camper, and I don't have any grandkids that I'm gonna come visit in winter, okay? But we should have that as a possibility, that if you've got grandkids, and grandpa and grandma bring their motor home to visit the grandkids, how many of us, when we were little, took our tent out in the yard and pitched a tent and slept with grandpa and grandma in the yard? Okay?
And I
No
don't-
different, but I like the idea of having a limit on that, like the 72-hour limit. If they come for a weekend, hey, you kids want to sleep in the motorhome tonight? Well, of course they do.
And understand that we don't care how this gets solved, we just gotta clean it up to where,
Yeah.
yeah, it's gotta be
Understand.
consistent. So if you guys wanna put in there,
I would really like a set amount of time, but if
Agreed.
it's something that they.
We can
come to
change
council
occasional
or
use to
something,
72-hour max.
Yeah.
or, and it could be too, that if someone is gonna be longer than that, they can come to council and get almost like a permit.
Right.
I mean, cause then you're gonna run into other problems too.
It can
where
be
if
a
somebody-
campground.
If somebody,
And that's what they're pushing people to.
Yeah.
I think these ordinances were directed to push people to renting a spot at a campground. Both of these ordinances, whether you're talking 154-379 or 72.04, clearly state shall not be used for living, sleeping, or housekeeping purposes. It's in both of these ordinances,
Yep.
whether it's zoning or
Or the parking.
The parking.
Yeah.
It says shall not in both of those. That's consistent. The only thing that it's allowing is 72 hours to park it there on the street before you move it
Without sleeping in it.
without sleeping in it.
And I can tell you from experience that at wherever Dakota Valley School is, that
Yeah.
town, okay?
North Sioux City.
In North Sioux City, yep. They hosted a state baseball tournament. I took a camper trailer down there, parked it in the parking lot. The second night I was there, 4 o'clock in the morning, knock, knock, knock. You can't camp here. Well, I'm not camping, I'm just sleeping. Okay? Well, you have to go to a campground. I said, do I have to do it right now? No, but tomorrow you do. Okay, so they have the same exact ordinance. Go rent a place, and so I can agree with that too.
I think this is probably consistent across the whole state.
Yeah.
So does
And-
this prevent me from, say I have a group of hunters that are coming for a week to stay and they park their camper beside my garage
Yeah.
and they live there for a week?
They cannot.
Yeah,
That prevents
it will.
that.
It does.
Even on its private property.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why I'm okay with a time, and like Justin discussed, if it's gonna be something that's longer, like, I know we have a situation in town here where they're remodeling a house, so they're staying in a camper. I would like a short, or, and that's just me, or, you know, code enforcement here. I'd like a shorter time for the allowed, if it's 72 hours, if it's a week, whatever.
All it's allowing is that to park it there.
They just can't sleep in it.
Can't sleep or live in it.
Right, but I'm saying if we
Yeah, but
decided
you're gonna have
that,
to define live to me. Sleep is the key word, okay? Can't park my camper on the street and take a nap this afternoon.
Well, it says sleeping.
It shall.
It's
no-
defined. It says no
no such
living,
equipment
sleeping,
I agree.
or.
Shall be used for living, sleeping, or housekeeping purposes.
Yep,
right,
When parked or stored on a residential lot.
So if somebody was building a house, like Chelsea's talking about,
yep.
and if it was written into the building permit, could they stay in there in a camper while the construction of the house is being done?
Not according to this ordinance.
If we changed the ordinance to
Right.
permit that, they could.
but also,
As it's written now, no.
if you're doing inside renovations, I don't have anything to do with that. I mean, if they're not changing anything on the outside, then that wouldn't
Yeah,
be
because they don't even
something
get
that
a
I would
building
have a
permit
building
for the
permit
inside
for, right?
renovations.
Not if they're
They don't do one.
Right.
No building permit inside.
I think we should maybe think on this just a little bit, because I like the idea of a temporary, you know, Chuck Keiser, if he'd have lived in town and his house burned down, okay, does he have to go live in a motel? That's what we're saying. Go rent a house or go live in a motel, but don't bring your already owned camper, park it on your lot and live in it while we're building your new house.
According to
I
ordinance.
think, I understand that according to what we're saying, we're not gonna allow that to happen, but I think we should, with some kind of permission for circumstances, or whatever the right words are.
Well, that's a good start, but we need something that establishes the standard for what circumstances are permittable.
The back end,
Yeah,
the back end of the ordinance.
So right now.
There you go.
there's no ordinance on residential lot.
This is the
This
current
is the
ord-
current
Yep,
ordinance.
where it
Yes.
says occasional use may be
It says
allowed.
occasional use may be allowed.
So how this, well, yeah, that's just it. I
What's
don't
that?
have a definition, I don't have a definition currently of who allows this occasional use. I don't know what occasional is defined
But
as.
what would we
So-
argue about if we put all this stuff in print?
You're right.
The exact point we're trying to make.
thank you.
Yes.
Our meetings could be 25 minutes if we
Let's try to come up with the reasons that we can let an occasional use be allowed.
Would you like it to be a permit so that Chelsea has it on record and they need to?
Let them apply and go to the planning commission. What the hell we have a planning commission for?
The only problem I see with that, Brad, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, is that only meets once a month. So if we have a situation where somebody's house burns down and I can't approve them because I had my meeting yesterday and I gotta wait till the next month for my, unless we would do a special meeting, but that sounds messy and expensive.
You get
No.
sewer building permits.
Right.
So you should be
Does
able
this cover the whole city? Is this residential, commercial, everything?
Yes.
This particular one is on a residential lot or any location not approved for such use. So realistically, it's everywhere.
Yeah, 'cause you
Unless
can't
it's
put
in
a
the,
mobile
because
home
the
just anywhere.
MH zoned residential areas do allow campers, so.
So if you see one at one of the trailer parks, they are allowed there.
Yep.
And that does happen.
It does, yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're also paying utilities for that lot as well.
I think the ordinance is gonna have to be a lot longer.
You're probably right. You're probably
Well, I
right.
can see 100 different circumstances where, you know, where people are gonna, if you have like a commercial property, you know, and you have a guy that owns a big shop and he's got, you know, like, I mean, I don't wanna use any names, but just for instance, say Kaiser Trucking. I'm just thinking of that one because he's got that huge lot and he's got plenty of space to park. Well, if he's got some people that wanna come up and stay for a couple weeks and plug it, put their fifth wheel camper next to his shop, if it's not for profit or it's not for, is that hurting anything? I mean, I think what this thing is addressing is, if I own a lot in town, I'm gonna allow somebody to live in a camper on that lot for an extended period of time, so they don't have to rent a house or, but still, that's not the intention of that law.
Correct.
We gotta define what we want as temporary. I mean,
Yeah.
is it the 72 hours, is it 1 week, 1 month, 6 months?
We're,
We need to determine that, because if you own the lot and you're paying utilities, and you have, wouldn't that also fall under 4 inches of ground to park it?
yeah,
If you follow all those rules and you're paying utilities, and I own the lot, I pay the taxes, I keep it up, and I wanna come up here hunting opening weekend of pheasant season, I think I should be able to plug my camper in for 3 days. I've kept
And that's
a
the
lot of
question,
them done
for how long?
Everything.
And I think the biggest problem that we're gonna run into is it will be a case by case, because some of them will be 72 hours, others of them will be 2 weeks, others of them, in the
You can move
cases.
it 6 inches and it's been moved at 7.
Well, but what I'm saying is I think what we need to establish is who they ask to do this. And it becomes some type of permit deal, far less like, so if you figure that you have to remodel your house, you're gonna move your camper on site for 30 days and then the house should be livable, that you can get back into it. Who do they go to ask for this permit to be able to do that? And then it can be set and it can be looked at. If it ends up going longer, they just have to come back and say, okay, we experienced some problems, I'm gonna need another 2 weeks, okay, now you get a permit for an additional 2 weeks on this property. But what it's gonna stop, because what we don't want is people just literally living in their camper on a city lot.
So what stops them under your scenario from coming in and getting a permit saying, we're gonna start working on building a house? We own 2 lots, and so we're gonna be building the house here, and on the lot next to it, we'll just park our camper and stay there while we're building the house.
Because then when they apply for that permit, there's an X amount of days that permit is good for. So
Well,
then
a building permit is automatically good for 6 months and can be renewed for another 6.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the building permit. This permit doesn't have to follow along with the building permit because it's gonna try to encompass so many different scenarios.
So it's
if-
not going to necessarily be built or be based upon the fact that they're doing a building permit.
No,
What if anything over 30 days had to go to city council
planning and zoning.
or planning and zoning?
And I have no problem with that as long as we establish, it doesn't matter whether it's city council or any body, the question is,
Right.
what are the limitations, what are the standards, what are the bases upon which you can grant or deny? The last thing you want to do is create a situation where it becomes,
Unenforceable.
well, it becomes objective depending on whether we like this guy or not.
Yeah, because we also have the word major. Major recreational vehicles, does that mean that my pole camper doesn't count as a major?
You've been surprised because I've been waiting for somebody to bring that one up.
I'm sorry, but what is a major recreation? Is that like the bus
Precisely,
that's
yeah.
converted into a motorhome? Or is it just a Winnebago? Or could it be just a pop-up camper that I
And
pull
see,
behind my car?
now this is where it becomes, because to me, my interpretation of major is anything you can stay in. Because like a pontoon's a recreational vehicle, but if it has no sleeping quarters in it, obviously you're not going to sleep just on the outdoors. Could you? Yes. But I'm talking boat, I'm talking side-by-side, anything used for recreational purposes would constitute a recreational vehicle. So when I see major, I see something that you can actually stay in, but that's my interpretation. So again, we probably need to clean it up.
Yeah.
And-
So,
And I think you need to protect the citizens in the winter a little bit. You gotta think about the people. Would you want,
That's right.
like Brad said, somebody's gonna pull in their 1972 Bluebird school bus with the windows all painted black and steps, built homemade steps going out the back. Would you want that next to your house for 60 or 90 days? I know I wouldn't.
Right.
One of these
Well-
clearly spells out no parking on the streets except for 72 hours.
just sleep.
Well,
No,
Sleeping
that's,
on the
Really,
street.
I
The
mean,
parking
if
ordinance.
they own that, they can park it
clearly
on there.
spells they can't.
72.
lot
The other
anyway,
side of
just as
this
long as they're not
is
living in
they're
it.
actually pulling
You know?
this
According to
ordinance.
this, they can't.
They can park it, they just can't live in it.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
park it
This
in
is
store.
pulling it onto
So,
their property.
I mean, if you had this big
That's
blue
the
bus, I mean, really, you.
Yeah,
can park
the
it on
one's
your
talking about
bunch of
parking on
streets.
public property,
And
the
one
other,
is on private property.
this is talking about use of private property.
So we made it good here. Now we're moving to here, because this one clearly states 72
72
hours
hours.
to park on a public street, can't live in it while it's on the street.
Can't live in it at all. Yep.
Want to pull it onto your property and hook it up? That's where we're at now. I was trying to differentiate.
But that's
That's
still,
all right.
that's still an invalid use for a city lot in winter without without a
Conditionally.
conditional use permit because it's a mobile home. Okay, so
Not by state definition of a mobile home.
So what if
it's on
I,
wheels.
what if I'm gonna build a house and I'm gonna hire a crew from New Mexico and they're gonna get here and they don't wanna stay in a motel, but they wanna bring their camper down here and they wanna live on site, we can allow that.
We allow it for the for the carnival, but guess what? Limited number of days. Okay? I really like allow it on private property for a limited number of days, and if you want something more than that, go get a conditional use permit for that property. And let the planning commission decide what the parameters are for a conditional use permit. 72 hours is a weekend. If I want to come visit for Memorial Day, bring in my camper, I'm going to sleep in my camper on my son's lot, I should be able to do that.
Understand that the planning commission only makes a recommendation, it still comes back to this body.
I understand that, yep. I understand that, but we have them for a purpose.
So then you gotta look at is if you're going to for that purpose, which 100% fine with, but what about the purpose of somebody owns a lot in winter, so they bring their camper and just put it on an empty lot? 'Cause those are-
72 hours.
Those are gonna be two separate issues, but then.
That's not living though.
72 hours is the
That
key
is what it
without a conditional use permit. And I'll bet you the planning commission is not gonna take a 8x16 camper and give a conditional use permit to permanently put it on this lot. Okay?
But the planning.
But they
commission's
may
gonna- what you
give a
dumping this on
conditional
us
use
for?
permit for 6 months while you are fixing your house that burned down. Or building your new house because you're moving to town and your house isn't built yet. I mean, there's all kinds of things the planning commission can consider that but I think we should have just automatic, you can put it on there for 72 hours, but you can't hook it up to sewer. You can't hook it up to water and sewer. Because we have no way of metering it, you know.
You can come in and pay the monthly minimum.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're paying your monthly minimums, why shouldn't you be able to?
If we don't have a meter on it, how we know they're only using the minimum?
We can meter it.
Okay. All right, well,
We do temporary meters all the time.
yeah, very good.
So you want to spell that out in the ordinance too, that they're required to get utilities set up through the city of Winter?
That's if they want to use them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's just something, and I'll ponder this a little bit before our.
Yeah, because all I'm doing is throwing out ideas.
Right,
That's-
and that's what we need to start from.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering if we're taking this a whole different direction that really is gonna come back to bite us. I haven't defined that in my own mind yet, I'm just telling you that that's one of the things I see. Forgive me for saying this, but I've got a picture in my mind of a disabled Vietnam vet driving that blue bus, pulling into town and spending $2,000 to buy a lot. And he's got nothing else other than a little bit of a disability payment every month that he gets from the federal government. And he's gonna pull that bus onto that lot and say, well, you know what? You guys can authorize somebody else to stay on their lot for up to X number of months, depending on the circumstances, and it's all based upon how you guys feel about it. And if you guys feel about it that way, then I, as a disabled Vietnam vet, am entitled to have the same consideration.
So do we have an up to, I mean, up to 60 days, you know, if they get the permit,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have to
Resubmit, re-permit.
And
move.
can we
remove the camper.
tighten that down to up to 60 days when construction of something else is taking place on the property?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you guys are trying to go with this, and I think we're heading in somewhat the right direction. I just want us to be careful because,
Make it possible with restrictions
Yeah.
of some kinds, that it can't be a permanent,
and then,
because none of us would want a permanent,
Right.
like the guy on 7th Street that put plastic around the bottom of his camper. That shouldn't be allowed. I don't think it should be allowed for the time that it's been there. It's been over a month, I think,
That's a remodeling situation,
okay?
so that's,
And,
but that's also why this came up, so.
well, very good, because if that's the case,
Yeah.
we should allow that to happen. I think.
And as
when-
far as the skirting and stuff goes, I mean, even if somebody wants to spend 72 hours, if it's in January or February, whoever's gonna stay in there is probably gonna skirt it for that 72 hours, because it's not a permanent skirting on those things. So, I mean, that's, yeah,
That's just
that
so your
wasn't the
pipes don't
biggest
freeze.
issue, yeah, exactly.
well, been great discussion, and I've scribbled some notes for myself. And I may borrow upon a couple of the folks that are on the city payroll to help sit down with me and do a little other brainstorming based on this. We'll try to get some things put together and bring it back at the next meeting. I think we
Well,
probably.
I know if we don't allow it at all, we're not gonna be any different than many towns in South Dakota.
Right.
You know, Go rent a camper space, you know.
How much is a camper site per night?
Oh, they're as much as $30.
$30.
About half the price of a hotel room.
Oh, half. Hotel rooms are a lot more than $60 a night.
And it all depends on the campground too, because I've stayed in some that when I had a camper, I mean, it was, you know, 30, 35 bucks a night, and I've stayed in some that were 70 bucks a night.
Yeah.
It just
Oh,
depends
yeah,
on
it
the-
depends on where you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ones,
Obviously, I don't have a camper.
the ones in North Sioux were $30.
The state campsites are 27 now.
Where at?
The
State
state.
campground?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Times 30 nights, it's $810 a month if they need to stay there.
Is that just for the campsite, or is that like your electrical? and-
And
They
insurance-
don't have full.
Yeah, it includes.
That lets you plug
That's
in.
$27 a night at a state camp?
I would just, and I don't mean to add chaos to this conversation, because I think you guys all kind of figured it out, but somebody pulls into your house, pulls beside your house, and hooks up to it for a weekend, it's on your property. Oh, don't we have setbacks from the side? Have we encroached on that 6 foot on your neighbor
Right.
now? You would have to be on the back end of setbacks.
Right.
They've all got to be considered also.
A lot.
And I agree with that, and I think that's part of.
You could go,
And I think we've actually set a minimum square footage based on the size of the lot now, haven't we?
Of what? Square footage of the house?
Correct? And if you're moving in and,
I think we were talking about that. I don't know if that.
I don't know that I've seen
Yeah,
that,
it
but
hasn't.
okay.
we had started that
I
conversation.
know a while ago, there was talk about tiny homes not allowed
Yes.
in winter.
And I thought we moved forward.
That's all I know.
It has not been.
I don't know that that
Officially
ever got
defined yet.
passed.
We were talking about minimum square footage based on the size of the lot for tiny homes, so it had to be a set percentage of the square
Oh,
feet.
okay.
Obviously, a camper is not gonna fit that tiny home where we started to go with it, so.
Right.
But that's also, I think you're talking two different things there, because that is for a permanent structure, this is for a temporary use
Right.
on there.
I think there is a difference between a permanent structure and this temporary camping type situation that we need to get a handle on.
But I think the fact that we do have a facility and when we do have a campground out there, that does make a difference, because it's not like they don't have an option, because they do have an option.
let's forge ahead, so, because I promised Austin we'd have you guys out here by 9.
Did you say by noon?
Yeah, by noon, yeah. You'll see in front of you the next is a copy of the current lease with the gun club, officially the Rosebud Arrow Rod and Gun Club, which is a 99-year lease for $1. The question has been posed by the gun club as to whether we would consider as a city basically renewing that at this point in time to give them a new lease starting now for 99 years from now, which would be 23 years, because that's how far we're into the current leases.
76 years left on it, and they want to renew it.
Yes.
That
was the
Why?
discussion.
I want to know why. What's the ulterior motive behind this?
The only discussion that I heard, and I may have only heard part of it, is that they wanted to do some renovation, possibly put a nicer, newer, better building on the place for their storage or other uses that they may give of the structure there. That's the only thing that I heard. Whether there's more to it, I don't know.
And they're gonna get, this is a question, it's gonna sound, they're going to get a loan under a leasehold improvement clause or something?
I have no idea. I didn't say that, because I have no idea if they're gonna get a loan, or if they're gonna raise cash beforehand, or how, I don't know. That was this whole question. Now,
What detriment is there to us to take a 73-year lease and make it into a 99-year lease?
All we do is tie the hands of council 76 years from now for 23 more years.
that's
Yeah,
right.
That's
That's
I
right.
don't know who that council
Personally, I would personally advise against it because, you know, as we sit here today, we can recommend that we give them another 99 years. But 70 years from now, somebody's gonna say, what in the heck were they thinking? Why did they, you know, you don't know what you get, you have no idea what winter's growth's gonna do. You have no idea, you know, that gun club is, you might want that property for
Could be
something.
the center of town.
99, you know, 73 years from now, you might want to put another substation there. You might want to add on to your wastewater plant. You might want to, you know, you might need that property at that time. I think that,
And that 23 years,
Motion table that and ask some questions if we're gonna vote.
Done.
okay.
We'll
Just
table
find out
that.
why, yeah. If
Find
they have
out
if they
what
have a
they're-
really good reason, we might want to say, well, yeah, that's a really good reason.
Sure.
I'm guessing they're probably going to update some stuff. You know, their trap throwing thing is getting pretty old. And, you know, I'm guessing if they're going to invest money, they're going to want to.
Mr. Harder in here to discuss in our next, actually, let's just bring it to the police, 911 and fire committee.
That's fine.
Good plan.
Let's just ask him questions. If you guys have any questions, give them to those committee members and
Yep,
let's pose those to them.
yep.
There's one thing I will say with working with them over the last 4 years plus, like they've been extremely easy to work with, and they've really made some nice improvements down there.
So that's a week from today.
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be a week from today. And if either one of you want to attend, you certainly could. Or if you want Joe or Ron to ask questions on your behalf, or Mr. Jensen or Justin,
Yep.
please do.
Okay, the next document you have in front of you, we have a second addendum to the garbage contract, and what this boils down to is our contractor has reportedly made a lot of efforts to find a place that he could rent for indoor storage of his trucks, and has just not been successful at finding anything that's suitable, workable. He has asked for permission to, park the trucks on the property out there at our transfer station, and also during off hours when the facility is closed, wants the ability to park the trucks indoors, obviously for the winter time, for those purposes, and otherwise just for general safekeeping and things like that. So the purpose of this would be to permit that with some real stipulations on it. Number one, it's obviously only going to be using the indoor facility when we're closed. And during those hours, he can park outside when the facility's open. He can, if it's winter time, he could plug in if he needs to keep the vehicles from freezing up the hydraulics or whatever they plug it in for, things like that.
What's that come out to per month, the parking structure?
I don't know the square footage. Has anybody ever measured?
The square footage of the trucks or of the building?
He never gave it to me.
He was supposed to get
No,
back.
it's just the trucks.
Just the
Okay.
trucks, yeah.
Just the trucks. based
So if
on
they're like-
55.
8 feet wide and 20 feet long, 160 square feet.
Right.
Times 2,
Yeah, okay.
320 square.
They wouldn't be any bigger than that, would they, Troy?
No, they're
8 by 20 would be big. Yeah.
So you're talking,
That's probably pretty close.
I'm guessing that's probably about the size.
so 320 square feet, 320, or $3,200 a year divided by 12.
You're looking at $267.
How much?
$267 a month-ish.
Ish.
Which should cover the cost of the electricity. I'm concerned about plugging the truck
He's not gonna
in.
plug them in if they're inside.
If they're inside, they're not.
No.
But if they're outside, we should have a meter for his trucks to be plugged into, because I'll guarantee you, I had a portable space heater, a milk house heater in my basement, and it put my electric bill over $60 a month. One little tiny 750 watt heater.
A block heater in winter is about $5-6 a day to have your truck plugged in.
Yeah,
Just for comparison for
Which is
council, we
similar
charge
to-
$9 a square foot for this building, and that includes your utilities.
I'm sorry
We
again.
charge $9 a square foot to rent from this building, and that includes your utilities, and it covers all utilities that anyone uses.
Yep.
So he's willing to pay $1 more than that, than $10 a square foot, and he's not always going to be using our electricity.
He shouldn't have to plug in if he's in, I mean,
If he's
that,
inside, there's no.
If he's
reason.
inside, he won't have to plug in.
that was the whole intent, is to get him inside, because plugging in the truck doesn't do anything for the hydraulics, and that's his biggest problem in the morning to get going,
Okay.
is if it's 0 degrees out, he's gotta let that truck warm up for, for half an hour before the hydraulics are,
I understand.
so
Yep.
that, the whole idea is to get him indoors. And, we're not gonna ramp the heat up in there because his trucks are in there. We're gonna keep that building at about 50 degrees this winter.
Yeah, that ain't gonna mess with his hydraulics.
right.
But if he has to park them outside during the day, when he's not using them,
On those cold winter days, I would guess he's gonna wanna plug in.
Because our guys are not gonna move them in.
Correct.
Only his guys can operate his trucks.
I
So
understand that.
So they're done at noon, so from noon till 5, when they come to park it in when we close, there is a potential maybe it could be plugged in from that time if it's super cold out. Because his guys are the ones who have to come back at 5 o'clock to put it in there, because they can't be in there when we're trying to operate the recycle center.
Right.
I have no doubt that Adam and Travis will figure out a schedule that works for them, where Travis will have his garbage picked up and moved into the trailer by the time those guys are ready to park. I mean, they don't dump their garbage loads on the floor every night down there. If they're only half full, they keep it in the truck, and so Travis and Adam will figure it out. They'll get some kind of a schedule worked out so it works for both of them.
We did make sure to require as part of this agreement that they operate their own equipment, we don't touch
Yep.
it. They give us a indemnification provision, so that if there's any damage, it's their problem, not ours.
We're both insured, I know that, but his trucks pull in, they have electrical fire and burn the building down.
Mhm.
It's his problem.
Correct.
His insurance replaces our building.
they're
Correct.
indemnifying
Our
us.
building starts on fire and burns his trucks. Our insurance is responsible for his trucks.
It will, yeah.
Okay.
As long as it's an act of, not any negligence on his part or whatever. If it's our building and we have faulty electrical connections and they cause a fire, yeah, that's gonna be ours.
I'm fine with it. I will say that is very cheap heated truck storage.
The thing, here's the, I'm actually the one that brought this up because Adam has tried. He's exhausted like every revenue possible to find a place to park those trucks. And he was to the point where he was out at the campground, renting a campground spot and just plugging them in out there. But we had that cold stretch and, you know, it's just, I mean, that's just not, I'm just, you know, we want to be good neighbors with Adam, but I'm also, what I'm looking out for is the citizens of Winter. If he's constantly, you know, having to fight truck issues, what it's gonna do is it's gonna slow down our process of getting our garbage picked up.
And it
So-
sure might prevent a rebid of the next time. I'm a little concerned about item C, because it says we authorize him to plug him in outside the facility. When he has to park his trucks outside, we're gonna let him plug them in. I don't know that $10 a month is enough for that. You said it was $5 a day? 5 times 30 is 150.
No, it's $10 a square foot, not $10 a
What
month.
he's saying what his monthly rent is about equivalent to having a truck
Oh,
plugged in every day. But
I mean, we can monitor how much their bills go up if you would like to.
let's go.
If we're gonna let him plug him in outside, we should have a meter on it,
True.
right off the bat. Let him park him inside for the money that he said, and put a meter on the outlet that he's gonna be authorized to plug into outside. Let him buy his own electricity to keep his trucks warm when they have to sit
How
outside.
big a deal is that for us to put a meter on that?
I'll have to buy, we'll have to buy a whole separate meter can
Yeah.
and then I mean, I can get prices on it, I'll get Ray, have Ray look it up, but
Pay for the meter.
Huh?
It'll take several months to pay for the meter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's
You
not
had
a
a
good
price
price.
of,
I think it's between $5 and $6 a day per truck plugged in.
for using what did you call
Block
it?
heater.
A block heater is $5 to $6.
So that's $300
Well,
a month,
Correct.
2 trucks.
correct,
But only if he plugs them in while they're outside.
right.
They're gonna be inside overnight, so yeah, so it's not gonna be that much.
Yeah, it's not gonna be 24 hours.
Okay, all right.
no, and like I said, their schedule, you know, just, it pretty much takes them an 8-hour day lately to get the garbage picked up. So the commercial truck, it definitely does. Those guys are always out till 4 o'clock. The residential truck is sometimes in early, but, you know, even if it's 0 degrees out and that truck's been running all day and he parks it, if it sits there for an hour, it ain't gonna make no difference. I mean, that truck ain't gonna freeze up.
All right, very
So he
good.
doesn't need to plug in.
In the event of them working late or something, and our guys go home, they're gonna have a fee or something to pull
Yeah.
them in. 'Cause we're not gonna make our guys drive back out there.
So if we scratch that last sentence in paragraph C, that gets rid of the plugging in? Is that what you're thinking, Brad?
Nope, I'm not, you talked me out of
Changed
it.
his mind.
Leave it alone, we're
Yeah,
okay?
Leave it just like it is.
Okay.
Let them plug in outside if they think it's necessary.
Okay.
Because the way it sounds, it's not gonna be very often.
And it won't be for a lot of hours. Usually it's gonna
That's
be,
what I mean, yeah. But I do know this, because I called the finance, I said, what the hell happened to my meter? Oh, I know what, I had my bus plugged in trying to get it started. And so, and it was plugged in for a month, and holy shit. So,
you guys okay going to council with that?
I'm okay with it, yeah.
Okay, all right. Travel and reimbursement of expenses, I'm gonna let Chandra talk.
So the first highlighted paragraph is actually federally mandated, so we have to change our policy to do that. If they are gone for a one-day deal, it has to go through payroll. If it's an overnight trip, then it goes through accounts payable. For example, any of our transport officers that we've been paying through accounts payable, no more. They get paid through their payroll, and it is subject to taxes and all that good stuff. So that's a federal mandate, we don't really get a say in that. The second paragraph that's highlighted, ultimately, we found that everyone was doing it different. So we found that some were saying, you're only gonna get 40 hours, doesn't matter if you traveled more and went to classes more, you're only getting 40 hours. Well, when we did the research, the feds do say that if it is mandatory for your job, and you are in class, mandatory 40 hours, then you will also pay them overtime for the travel. However, you can make them give you the itinerary for their class that is 100% mandatory, and if they're getting to leave for lunch, they're getting breaks, they're getting something that has nothing to do with that mandatory position, you don't have to pay for that. What the suggestion is every employee that goes to a conference or training or anything like that, we'll tell them they get 8 hours a day. They can't go over that. But we also want them to tell us what they're doing for those 8 hours a day, because if you're going to a conference and you're going back and sleeping in your hotel room for half a day of it, that's gonna cover your travel to get there. So ultimately, this is just making this better on payroll side, on the department head side, on knowing, number one, what their employees are doing, number two, everyone doing it the exact same, rather than, well, I like this department, so yeah, they can do whatever they want to, and this department is willy-nilly, and heck no, we're not paying them, and, you know, different things like that, so. And mileage reimbursement is on top of this. Mileage reimbursement does come through accounts payable, and then they would get that on top of any hours. But if they are traveling for a mandatory class or training, we have to pay them to travel, even if it means overtime. But typically, the two biggest mandatory classes that I'm aware of would be 911 and police. Their job schedules, itineraries, are only about 35 hours a week. So then and they're in here, we're covered. Technically, our employees get an extra hour in there above, because travel's only 4 hours if you drive slow. So we're covered, that's fine. We're not gonna have them come in and work an hour at the desk. So they're still gonna get their 40 hours those weeks. And some weeks are longer, so it does really average out. I think MMUA does require certain classes too. Now that I've said that out loud, the electric department is required to go to certain continuing ed every year.
Oh, so is water and sewer. They have to have so many contact hours, just like, they gotta have contact hours, so they have to go to training.
Okay.
Every 12 months, they have to have so many hours of training to keep their license current.
And Troy was, when I talked with him about it, I mean, they're an 8-hour day. So it's pretty easy if they know it's gonna take 4 hours to get to Minnesota. You leave at noon or 1 o'clock the day before, you do your class for 8 hours, you come home the next day during your normal 8 hours. They were doing exactly what they were supposed to in that department. You're welcome. Sorry.
So according to this, are we paying them 23 cents a mile?
If they take their own
If they
vehicle.
take their own vehicle and there was a city vehicle available.
Oh,
And there was,
Yes.
okay.
because I'm like, when my guys go to training, I always make them either take my vehicle or something, I
If they
don't,
take a city vehicle, there is no mileage reimbursement. We pay for the gas, we're paying for the upkeep on the
Correct.
vehicle. So they'll get 23 cents per mile if there was a city vehicle available for them to take, but they chose to take their own because maybe they're going to go on vacation after.
Yeah,
If
there's-
there was not a city vehicle available, then it's 42 cents per mile.
Isn't the federal reimbursement low, like 57 or 58?
Federal is more, but this, we follow the state.
Very good, okay, thank you. Yep,
It's actually like 61 or something like that.
yep. So if you want to take your own vehicle, too bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
it's 9
Yep.
o'clock, and
Good to go on that?
I got one that we gotta address.
Yeah, we have to address this last one.
What, the fuel procurement?
Yeah.
I'm good with it, he added the paragraph.
Did you see what I've added?
I did, I read it already, so
Austin, you're good?
if you bring us
Okay.
the wrong fuel, you get a warning, and then if you
Second
do it
time.
again, you don't get to bid next year.
2 strikes, you're out.
2,
Yep. Okay,
you didn't change anything else.
did you have something else?
Okay, yep, and I need direction on this one because I'm getting beat up by the public on it. Cats.
Me too.
I have got cats. I have gotten
Cats.
cats. I have gotten. I'm getting like in the last 2 months, I've gotten 50 phone calls on cats.
I got chewed out at lunch the other day.
There's people in town that they've got. You know, I actually witnessed it. They've got. I don't know where all these cats are coming from. I know there was a ton of cats in that building that we tore
From the
down.
cat out.
There was.
But I've also heard that there's people in town that are adopting cats until they can find a home for them. And they're letting these cats go, they're adopting them, but they're not keeping them in their homes. They're letting them outside, and then, so these cats are going around and they're sitting on other people's property. And I got one couple down there, they've got patio furniture and the cats are sharpening their claws on it, and they've destroyed all the cushions on their patio furniture. I got the ladies up here on Main Street that the cats are pooping in the parking lot, so there's so much cat poop in the parking lots, they're walking in it. I got another people over here that there's a house that's, no one's living in it, and the cats have moved in, and I think they had babies.
Okay.
And now there's but we don't have a, so here's what I tell people, and I talked to Mark about it, and I said, what's our procedure for that? And so you go ahead and tell them what our procedure is.
Anytime a homeowner has this issue, we do have traps down there, and they can use our traps and trap the cats. And then a lot of times they can either call us, and then we will try and relocate the cat, or if they do, whatever they do.
So they don't like that answer. Long story short is they
shouldn't have to trap
they
their
want the
cats.
city to do something about the cats.
Yeah.
As a homeowner, they're saying, no, that's not my responsibility to take care of these stray cats. They want the city to do something, so I need some direction on it, at least something to tell these people or whatever, but,
223s are really quiet.
No,
You're still live streaming.
I'm sorry.
You're still live streaming.
Okay,
it's being recorded.
that's why I said it.
yeah, no, you
Take care
cannot
of
shoot
your
them.
cats or they're subject to consequences.
Not that.
Not in town. No, they're not.
But we do need to figure something out on the cats. I don't know where we go with this, but we need to start this conversation, and we need to come to some kind of a conclusion, because we can't just keep telling people, because it's gonna get worse here in the next couple months. It's gonna get cold and the cats are gonna be, I've personally experienced it at my house. If I leave my garage door open,
Yep.
there'll be a cat in there.
What ordinance do we have regulating cats?
I believe the only thing on the books is regarding how many you can have within your home.
No,
No, but-
it's illegal.
yeah.
You can't.
That's-
hold
it's
somebody
unconstitutional.
Cats you can have in their home. American Legal told us that when we redid all of our ordinances.
Right.
So it had to get removed.
So what's on the books?
That's it.
You can't have feral cats. That's really about all that's out there.
So we don't have a leash law for cats?
No.
It's pretty limited. When we removed the household one, it was suggested at that time that we figure something out, but there's been enough other things that have come up. Ultimately, right now, it falls underneath code enforcement and the police department. So, unless they're on the
Anything
street
to
and
do with it.
already deceased, and then
Yeah.
Public Works goes and picks them up. But otherwise, the live animals, it's always been under code enforcement and police to deal with at that point in time. They have, same as if a dog is running loose.
So, and this is what people keep saying, is people, well, if my dog goes roaming free, doesn't matter what size the dog is, if it's a Chihuahua or it's a Saint Bernard, if it goes roaming free and somebody reports it, the police pick it up and it goes to the dog pound. We have nothing for cats.
And that's why we offer the trap, because they know where to set it, but we will always come and pick up the trap with the cat in it.
So let's talk about SOPs when there is a dog called in. The dog is on the run, we have animal control, or in this case, animal control takes care of the animals down on the town. It's the police department's responsibility to respond and capture said animal and take it down there. Do we go out, do we actually go on to private property pursuing dogs in the chase?
If it's called animal control, why is it limited to dogs?
Well, it's
No,
not.
No, I'm just getting SOP for, what I'm establishing here is the standard operating procedure.
Yep.
It's called in, the police department will go anywhere at that point to capture
And get that
and get that animal.
uncontrolled animal.
Correct,
So is not a cat also an uncontrolled animal?
correct.
But I will also tell you that we do not have a 100% success rate of catching those that are extremely good at running. Most of the dogs that we take down to the pound, we open up the back car door and say, come on, and they jump in the back of the cop car.
A cat ain't gonna do
I
that.
have never seen a cat that even likes its own humans. So I highly doubt that it's going to just jump in the back of our patrol car. So that's where the traps completely different thing. We don't trap dogs. You would have to trap the cats, because it is a completely different, no pun intended, but completely different animal that we're dealing with.
I understand.
So, but
But
there's
I
a way
don't
to
know
do
that
it,
our answer
So
should be.
if we had more dogs running
We'll
around,
give
would
you
we
a
have less
trap, you
cats?
go catch it.
guaranteed. What's that?
I don't think that our answer as a city, we'll give you the trap, you go catch it.
Yeah,
It
the
should
pub-
be.
public
we'll
does
be-
not.
We'll be right over with a trap, you show us where to put it.
And that's fine.
That's what I think, and let's catch it.
Unfortunately, the only
Take 'em to
problem
Greenville.
is the reality of the situation currently, because obviously, there's hundreds. So we don't have hundreds of traps, so we can let you, or we can set the trap. That's not a big deal. It takes, I don't know, 10 seconds to set the trap. Open the door, you're good to go. But now that trap's out of commission until, because we're still gonna need that homeowner to tell us when there's a cat in it too.
And you only
And then
have
we'll reset
one
it.
time.
Yep, we'll get rid of it, do what we have to do, and then we'll move forward. But that's kind of our limitation at this point.
So you and I were at a house that may or may not have been referenced, and an individual is coming from an outside neighboring community and feeding the cats at this location. True story.
Yep.
From a different community and feeding the cats, and the garage door is open, the side garage door is open. When does that become maintaining a public nuisance?
So we, Justin and I have had this discussion, and that house is actually gonna be required to be on the vacant structure registration, which requires them to secure the property so that nothing can get in and out, which is gonna require closing the doors on that garage where they are
I mean, there
taking
are
shelter.
boxes of food
And I can't,
on the porch.
on the vacant structure side, I can't, other than, the garbage and refuse,
But that's
that
my
sort of deal.
question. When does
But-
that become a public nuisance according to law? Because this
We
is-
would have to define it. I don't think our current ordinance defines it.
Is there any kind of law, like, I mean, is that an uncontrolled animal? I mean, when you take a, just because so I'll reference another case that we have in town here, and it's an individual that's taken these cats in for adoption until they can be placed. Well, it's up to quite a few cats, like over a dozen cats now. And this person is not keeping those within the confines of her house, she's letting them roam. They're out in the backyard.
But they are neutered. She is neutered.
They are neutered and they are spaded, but they're still going on to other people's property and they're still
Correct.
when does that become an uncontrolled animal, or when does that become
So.
is that a new,
It
that's
does,
a,
the answer to the question is that
They don't list how many they can have in their home, but if they have more than 3 adult cats, they're harboring more than 3 adult cats within city corporate limits is declared to be a nuisance.
Could we do
There's your
that though?
number.
and
If they-
that's unconstitutional.
It's not saying in their home, and I believe that was the unconstitutional part, was we couldn't say how many they could have in their home.
There was a similar case that went to the South Coast Supreme Court, and I'll have to go dig it up and refresh my memory, but it had to do with the number of dogs maintained on a property within the city, somewhere down in the southeast part of the state, but,
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't leash law apply to cats as well? I mean, if it is, you catch a cat and it has its collar on, it's clearly owned, that leash law would still apply to that cat, just like it does to a dog. When a dog gets off the property and runs, like if we know that that cat is personally owned or whatever else, that would still apply for that, running at large.
it would apply, I mean, I'm coming back to the same thing I told the mayor and the same thing I told Troy a minute ago. It would apply if we put it into the ordinance to apply. Under the current ordinance, we don't have that.
Okay.
Boy, we have so many ordinances that don't work, holy cow.
Because I want it for chickens too. I want a leash law for chickens too.
We have a law for chickens.
Yeah, they-
Leash law.
Yeah, I know.
Well, but if they get off the property,
We have way too many cats.
yeah, well, something needs to be done with this, because the public is they're getting irate on this, so we gotta come up with a solution. We can't just keep telling them,
Match the law that we have for dogs and enforce it. Is that possible? I mean, do we have a different law for dogs than we have for cats?
The problem is we have nowhere to go with the cats when we catch them. That's the biggest problem.
Gregory,
No, Gregory's pulling them back here.
Not the place we work with, no, they're not.
Just put them in our pound with the dogs.
then see how long they last. That'd be better than a